Rangam Meghanathan, who has been very keenly from day one interested in this concept. And so is Mrs. Aarti Ganesh, our host, and a person who shares a kind of a pain which all of us are undergoing about the state in which this country, this society, our ancient idea called dharma are placed today. I am going to share with you a very critical experience which I had in December 2010 in IIT Bombay, where I had been called to give a lecture. The IIT students are drawn into managing some of the biggest corporates, government programs, United Nations, IMF, World Bank. So you can understand that this is a talent bank from which the world draws. And in that there was a lecture program, and in that Adi Godrej, the chairman of the Godrej group of companies, happened to speak ahead of me, and I was to speak afterwards. Mr. Godrej said that we were a backward civilization, and we began growing only after this idea of globalization came from 1990s. Till then we were a failing civilization, and our growth rate was what was known as the Hindu growth rate. And the entire audience of some 500 students, research scholars, academics, roaringly clapped. And I could see the belittling of our Vedas, the Upanishads, the Gita, Krishna, Vyasa, Thiruvalluvar. Everybody stood discredited for producing a backward civilization. And it is not that my emotion was affected, but my intellect was injured. Because this is contrary to facts. Karl Marx, the person who produced the greatest mental revolution in the world by writing the Communist Thesis, he wrote 2 articles on our civilization, our country, our culture, the Hindu scriptures. And he said that this is a great civilization. For 2000 years, this civilization has maintained stability which is unknown to any other civilization. No convulsions, no wars. And its economy was based on a village model. They are worshipping monkeys. They are bowing before cows. What kind of civilization is it? More than that, they are claiming an antiquity which is older than Christian antiquity. And so these people are unbelievably imaginary, and this civilization has to be broken up. This culture and sociology has to be destroyed if they have to be prepared for revolution, because without revolution there cannot be any progress. And so the British people are doing the right thing by destroying the Indian society, culture, tradition, confidence, its literature, language, habits. And then in 1925, Max Weber, he was the one who looked at economics from sociological perspective. He wrote a book on India and China and said he never met any Indian. He perhaps never read any Indian literature. He never came to India. And so was Karl Marx. They all pronounced on India without coming to India, experiencing India, talking to India, reading Indian literature, knowing nothing about India. And so Max Weber also said, you see that 2 civilizations can never grow under modern capitalist conditions, and this is the Hindu civilization and a Buddhist civilization, because both of them believe in karma and rebirth. Once you believe in karma and rebirth, there is no innovation, there is no enterprise. And according to the research scholars who have done work on what has impacted on the Indian mind the maximum in the last 200 years, 150 years, it is these 2 thinkers who have exerted the maximum influence on India. But Galbraith, who came here, he could see there is anarchy, but still things are functioning. And then came Professor Rajkrishna. He was asked, why is the Indian growth rate low? He said it is Hindu growth rate, that we are always a slow people, backward people, and so we cannot produce better growth rate. This is how the Indian academic, intellectual, political, sociological establishment mindset was made. It is self-condemnation of the highest order. No civilization would have survived this kind of assault, intellectual, moral, theological, political, but we survived. Now you can go into the website and touch Angus Madison's work, which came out in the year 2001. World Economic History, a Millennial Perspective. This book is an open book produced by the OECD countries. They have made it available to the whole world. This is regarded as the most authentic economic history of the world, in which Angus Madison said that it is not only 1750. He mapped the entire world for 2000 years. And in the first year of AD, that is the Common Era, India's GDP proportion was 34%. India was the leading economic engine of the world in the first year after the death of Christ. In 1000, India was still leading, 28%. 1400, India was leading. 1500, China overtook India, India number 2. 1600, India again overtook China, China number 2. 1700, China again overtook India. The game was between these two countries, which Max Weber said could never produce development. You know, when I was talking to IIT students, the IIT academics, research scholars were not aware of these facts. They were stunned. Because Godrej was sitting there. He was shaken. I said, we stopped growing only after the British came. You know, in the year 1820, our share of the world GDP was still 18.2%. In 1900, 1.5%. Whole civilization crashed in 80 years. China crashed from 33% to 6%. India crashed from 24.5% in 1750 and 18.2% in 1820 to just 1.5% in 1900. India became a country of illiteracy, it became a country of hunger, it became a country of poverty, it became an underdeveloped country, it became a country which became untouchable. It all happened in 80 years. When I told this to the IIT, after the end of the meeting, the entire IIT staff, the students came to me and said, sir, this institution is not helping us to understand our country, our civilization, our capacity, our potentials. So we must inherently feel that something that is happening is not proper. We must have a seed of pain in our heart. Otherwise, we can't do what we are attempting to do or what I am persuading you to do. So I feel that all of us have some pain inside. And the pain is that what is happening is not correct and I am helpless. Because you are part of a huge machine. You have got to be in that, a nut, a bolt. You have got to be there. Otherwise, the huge machine will not work. And the whole intellectual exercise of India has been turned into a machine operated on a software supplied by the West, and this we call as our education system. You can understand the burden on all of us. We are delivering this knowing that somewhere it is very, very seriously wrong and causing huge injury to our national psyche, our culture, our traditions, our spirituality. And it doesn't stop with that. We don't want to reach your brain. We want to reach your heart. We don't want to just influence your thinking. We want to influence your conduct. We don't want to just secure your appreciation. We want to co-opt you. I think it is in the spirit that in the next 2 days we want to share our pains, our experiences, our views. And this society, this civilization is going to be a winning civilization in the next 10 to 15 years. Even if we don't do anything, it may happen. But if we do it, we will be happy to share in this success. And women have the greatest role in this because there is femininity in India, in our society, in our culture, in our economics. And I hope that this journey which begins today and will make Madras create a working and deliverable model which we can replicate throughout this country. Thank you very much. Unless you deliver this message to them that this life is not lived only for you but for others also, that message your education system doesn't deliver today. It makes him more and more self-centric. And so before you attempt any of those things, you must prepare the mind of the best student in the school classes. The best student must do that. The person with leadership. Somebody is a good sportsman, he must do that. Somebody is an exceedingly good singer, she must do that. Somebody is very good in class, number one, she or he must do that. When you make the leaders do that, others will follow.
I need to know the why for doing the rituals, to get convinced myself so that I can put that forth and integrate that along with my lessons. And
we have explained here the theoretical as well as the practical basis of, for instance, the need to build respect for parents. We need to build respect for parents because we are now seeing societies which have allowed the respect for parents to evaporate. Their economies have collapsed, their families have collapsed, and such a consequence should not visit us. Such a consequence should not visit us. That means building respect for parents is necessary. It is necessary for the society, it is necessary for the economy, it is necessary for overall peace in the society, so that the government is not burdened with taking care of elderly people. For that, how to create this quality in a student? The way of creating this quality in the student is that you are not doing this as a ritual. You are doing this as a nation building activity. If I respect my parents, that alone is not sufficient. I must make others also respect the parents. It must become a social virtue. It must be retained as a social virtue. This is the basis. The why of it comes here. We have explained about elders, we have explained about teachers, we have explained about women. You know, what is the problem of women today? The way a boy looks at a woman has changed. The way a neighbor has looked at a neighboring girl has changed. How to bring back the earlier understanding that women are somebody like you have to look at them as sister, brother. This used to be there 20-25 years ago very normally. It is because there is deterioration both ways. And how to create respect for women, for which we are suggesting that if you can do Kanya Puja. And the idea is not to do puja for the girl, but to do puja for womanhood. And that girl understands this message, and the people who do the message understands this, then the atmosphere changes. We want to change the atmosphere in each school. Likewise, this Bhumi Puja or Vriksha Puja or Go Puja, they are all intended to promote ecology, environment. You can't do puja for a tiger, but you can do puja for a cow and say this is our way of celebrating the entire animaldom. Don't see it as cow, you see it as the representative of the animaldom. This is how we have to explain why. We will come out with all these things, but in our own mind, we should be clear, we are not passing through these rituals for a very limited individual purpose. You do go puja, you will get 10 more marks. You can make people do that also, but we don't want to do that kind of puja. We want to relate the present generation with the contemporary mind, with the contemporary developments in science and technology, through this thematic quote unquote ritual symbolism,
to our sources. We will try and give you the literature. Right now, the literature is scattered all over. We have to bring them together and make it available in one place.
Recently, I have gone through an article that child marriages are leading in our country. Why so, sir?
See, this child marriages, many people do not know. It is essentially a feature of Rajasthan and communities which have emanated out of Rajasthan. It is not marriage at all. Most people do not know that on the Akshaya Tritiya day, any girl that is born, which is 2 or 3 years old, the persons who are interested in the girl, they go and say, your girl who is 3 and my boy who is 5 will be married. And the marriage doesn't take place then. But you see millions of children, their marriage is getting fixed, and this is called child marriage. Very, very rare the child marriages take place unless there is a prayer. Somebody says, I don't have a child. If I get a child, I will get her married when she before she attains puberty. People pray for that. Such marriages may take place. But Rajasthan marriages are all of this kind. On Akshaya Tritiya day, there is no girl who is more than 4 or 5 or 6, and no boy who is 7 or 8 or 10 doesn't get his marriage fixed. It's a social habit. Marriage doesn't take place, but the marriage gets fixed. This is what happens.
So this profound lectures and thematic posters, this resource, if it can be quickly prepared, will be very nice for them to launch in a better way.
Yeah, some arrangement is there now to prepare a CD of the proceedings here, properly edited, so that it is available to everybody. And there is also an effort to transcribe the speeches, and some speeches are halfway through in writing and all that. I think it will be available. It's an extremely important 2 days in my life. We have had 122 programmers from 55 schools. So it's a 123 programmers from 55 schools. It's a very major event, and being not an event which is just limited to 2 days, it is a 2-day planning for a future movement. So we should all be happy that collectively we are doing something significant for our civilization, our culture, our traditions. And you must have seen since yesterday something very different from what we have normally heard about our culture, about our nation, about our society, about our economy, is being told authentically. The most important thing is, we may speak assertively, but unless we speak authentically, assertion has no meaning. Assertion doesn't come out of the sound you use. It comes out of the authentic facts that you use. The resource persons who spoke yesterday and today have all done extensive work about India, about the Indian society, our culture, civilization, the contribution of the families, women, unrecorded in economic textbooks of India. This is the most important thing. And this is about the real culturally backed economic strength of India, about which even the most acute economic thinkers in India are confused as to how India is performing without foreign investment, without exports, because these are all the tools and escalators on which countries develop, like most of the Asian countries, whether it is Taiwan or Indonesia or Malaysia or Hong Kong or Singapore or South Korea or Japan or China, you look at all these countries, they have grown by foreign investment and export. But India has grown without both. So most economists are confused as to how growth is taking place in India. And only we have been able to unearth the hidden India, and we have successfully presented it to many economic thinkers, think tanks, even the government. That is what we presented to you yesterday and today. On 27th August at Maharishi Vidyashram, at the time of which we will have a literature about these thematic rituals. We will have a literature, the theme, as well as the method of doing, as well as how each institution can choose. It is not necessary that there will be a uniform formula for everybody, and there you can choose what you want to do, or you can have a choice of 2 or 3 and then come and decide. And we will have a plate full of choices there, and from there we will begin moving. I am extremely happy that all of us spent 2 very useful days at a very heavy personal cost, and our team is totally grateful to all of you and to Wales, who have looked after us in the way traditionally all of us will be looked after by hosts. And I have nothing except being grateful to all of you. Thank you very much.